All right, so I'm going to share some slides because I think the first thing that we have to do is make sure we're on the same page when we define race. Race is one of those concepts that we take for granted. We think we know it when we see it, but we usually don't take the time to actually define it. And this is so important in terms of even framing the conversations that we have, how we think of the problems that we're facing and solutions. So I'm always going back to concepts, key concepts. And so I'll share my screen now to go over some of these definitions with you. Let's see. So here I have a quote from Carter G. Woodson, who is considered the father of Black history. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Carter G. Woodson, had collaborated with local librarians, community leaders, teachers, educators to found Negro History Week in 1926. And in his text, Miseducation of the Negro, he says, "Why not exploit, enslave, or exterminate a class that everybody is taught to regard as inferior?" So I just want to start there with Carter G. Woodson to remind us of why it's so important to tell the truth about our history, to document our history, but more importantly, to challenge the miseducation that we face in our classrooms, in society, and so on. And so I usually like to start with how we define race. A lot of times we talk about race as a biological reality that has since been debunked. So, the science tells us that there is really no biological basis for race, even though for, a couple of hundred years, we have been following this pseudoscience, this idea that race is biological in our cells, in our DNA, or in our blood. We moved away from saying that race is a biological reality to saying that race is a social construction. But I always ask the question, what does this mean? We need to go further to ask the question, race is socially constructed to do what, right? And so typically I'm trying to move us to thinking about race as a political invention. All right. Race is a political invention. It's not just a social construction. We know it's not a biological reality, even though we tend to still think of it that way. And so what does it mean for us, and how does it reshape our conversation if we think of race as a political invention and a system of governance? And so these are some key aspects or principles of how we define race in Black studies that I wanted to bring out today. And so I took a stab some time ago trying to then define race in a more precise way to get at this claim that we make that race is a political invention. And so here I say that race is a political invention that assigns meaning to perceived biological differences and uses those differences to justify unequal social and power relations. So in short, race is a power relation, So just kind of think about that. If we think about race as not skin color, it's not hair texture, because there are Black people who could pass for white and still had to be subjected to the racial order, in terms of discrimination and racism if they had one drop of Black blood or whatever ridiculous way that we measure race at any given time. Race is a power relation, and it's a power relation that's built on the lie and delusions of white supremacy. I usually add that part to it, but just thinking of race as it's a political invention used to justify unequal social and power relations. I was thinking about this from Dorothy Roberts. She is a legal scholar, sociologist, I believe, who also wrote a very famous and monumental text called Killing the Black Body, investigating how Black women have been subjected to just nefarious medical practices from enslavement into the modern day. But in her book, Fatal Invention, How Science, Politics, and Business Recreate Race in the 21st Century, she offered a definition of race that I thought was kind of speaking to how we often talk about race in Black studies. And so here in Fatal Invention, she says, race is a political system that governs people by sorting them into social groups based on invented biological demarcations. Race is not only interpreted according to invented rules, but more important, race itself is a political grouping. Race itself is a political grouping. Race is not a biological category that is politically charged. Race is a political category that has been disguised as a biological one. All right. So, really kind of sit with that. Race is a political category that has been disguised as a biological one. And so, I just wanted to open up the floor just a little bit to see what you're thinking about as far as this move away from thinking about race as a biological reality. We also going to get a little deeper than talking about it as a social construct, because that tells us nothing. Everything is socially constructed. You know, love, marriage, gender, these things are socially constructed. Race is a political invention, is what I'm suggesting. Race is a power relation. Are there any thoughts or questions, comments related to that particular nugget of information?